From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Fentanyl fight. What some border towns are doing to keep from being a drug smuggling pipeline.
Plus, former Arizona Congresswoman Gabby Giffords takes aim at strengthening the background check system for buying guns.
And it's the most iconic spot in the state and one of the most recognizable landmarks in the world. We'll show you how Arizonans are celebrating the Grand Canyon's centennial.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Nicole Hernandez.
And I'm Bayan Wang. Thank you for joining us. As federal authorities seize increasing amounts of drugs such as fentanyl and methamphetamine through ports of entry, towns across the southern border are being forced to combat the effects of fentanyl on a local level.
Cronkite News reporter John Cardinelli visited two of them who are tackling the problem in different ways. John?
We traveled to San Luis near Yuma and also to Nogales, Arizona to speak with law enforcement officials there and learn more about what they're specifically dealing with.
Dealing with a lot of clandestinely made fentanyl. They're the M30 pills, that's what they call them.
Lieutenant Marco Santana with the San Luis Police Department knows firsthand the impact fentanyl is having in his community.
You know, 2019, we've had it's a little bit, there's been more issues actually, and we've got about 15 non-accidental overdoses. One person passed away this year.
Fentanyl, a synthetic opioid that's 80 to 100 times stronger than morphine, is being intercepted at higher rates through Arizona's ports of entry. Narcan, which reverses opioid overdoses, has saved 14 lives in San Luis since the beginning of the year.
Every sworn member of this police department is trained in how to use the Narcan.
So every officer within our department has 2 canisters or 2 applications of spray.
While in San Luis, they've seen a slight uptick in the use of fentanyl, 323 miles away in Nogales, Sheriff Tony Estrada says his department is trying to prevent Santa Cruz County from being used as a fentanyl pipeline. He says they're understaffed, leaving much of the drug seizing operations up to federal authorities.
Including myself, we're 38. We're below the Bureau of Statistics recommendation of 2.5 per thousand. At 2.5, we should have over 60 deputies. We have 38. At the low end, at 1.5, we should have 41. We're 38. And that's remarkable because it's a very robust, active community with a lot of drugs coming through here, and families on both sides of the border for generations have been involved in facilitating the drugs, that we don't have more personnel.
As you can see here in Nogales, they've put up concertina wire to try and stop people from jumping the fence as well as transporting drugs. However, Sheriff Estrada believes that this will not stop the flow of drugs from coming into the U.S.
There have been over 100 drug tunnels that have been discovered here. Why? Because the cartels will find a way, and the wall is not going to stop them.
Corporal Oscar Mesta with the Nogales PD says their strategy for combating the flow of fentanyl is actually some good old-fashioned police work.
We started a new CAT team, which is Community Action Team, and we go out, door to door, talk to them. We take care of the small things, because how do you get information? How do you actually go and be proactive? You make contact with the citizens. They're your eyes and ears out there. They tell you, hey, they're using this house for this. That vehicle is being used for this.
To Lieutenant Santana, a similar community-involved task force will launch February 28th in San Luis, Arizona. The hope is that by getting residents involved, the number of overdoses will go down. In the broadcast center, John Cardinelli, Cronkite News.
The House is expected to vote on a resolution today that would overturn President Trump's emergency declaration. The Democratic-controlled House is expected to easily pass the measure. The legislation is in response to President's national emergency to fund a border wall. That came after he reluctantly accepted roughly $1.3 billion from Congress for border security. President Trump had initially asked for $5.7 billion, which led to a standoff that resulted in a 35-day government shutdown. He says he would veto the resolution in a move that would mark the first time he's exercised a veto during his presidency.
The president is on strong legal ground to declare this emergency, and when you see the vote today, there will be nowhere near the votes to override a veto.
If the House approves the resolution, it goes to the Senate, where it would need just 4 Republicans to cross the aisle for it to pass. Then it would go to Trump's desk.
A House committee, meanwhile, called on border officials to defend their handling of the Trump administration's policy of separating families at the border. Micah Bledsoe was at the heated hearing and reports from our Washington bureau.
When a stranger rips a child from a parent's arms without any plan to reunify them, it is called kidnapping.
That statement from House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler was one of the milder ones at today's hearing on the policy of separating children from parents at the southern border, a policy that Democrats on the panel attacked as uncaring.
This administration is responsible for the harm suffered by thousands of children and their parents.
But Customs and Border Protection Chief Carla Provost defended her officers' work in a difficult situation.
Debate about whether this constitutes a border security crisis or a humanitarian crisis. Let me be clear, it is both.
She chafed at accusations that children were not properly tracked by the many agencies that had a hand in their care after they were separated from their parents.
What the numbers don't show is how my men and women care for these vulnerable populations with the limited resources that they have.
Last fall, however, the Southwest Key shelter in Arizona was shut down after a worker was convicted of abusing minors. Arizona Congressman Greg Stanton says it's important to get answers, particularly in affected states like his, which bear the brunt of border policies.
In Arizona, what was going on even before there was a formal policy of family separation? Was there an informal policy?
Republicans on the panel were generally low-key, but some were as angry as the Democrats.
Mr. Chairman, make no mistake, there is a crisis on our southern border, one created by Congress's unwillingness to act and perpetrated by Democrats' open borders policy that allows drugs, guns, gangs, and human and child trafficking operations to spill across our border.
Stanton welcomed the debate on border security, but says there needs to be a limit.
We should have a healthy debate about what our border policy should be, but never the result of it should be taking kids away from their parents.
In Washington, Micah Bledsoe, Cronkite News.
Today's hearing was the first for the Judiciary Committee since Democrats took over the House, and another of many House hearings that are challenging Trump administration policies.
It was just over 8 years ago that a Tucson shooting spree killed 6 people and wounded 13, including then Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. Those injuries forced Giffords to resign from Congress, but not from public policy debates, as Cronkite News reporter Alyssa Klink reports from our Washington bureau.
Former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords has been pushing for what she calls, quote, responsible gun ownership, almost since that 2011 Tucson shooting. Like her recovery, it's been a long struggle, but one she is not giving up on. Former Arizona Congresswoman Gabby Giffords has given this speech before.
Now is the time to come together, be responsible.
But today's speech came on the eve of a House vote on the Bipartisan Background Checks Act of 2019, one of the major priorities of the new Democratic majority in the House. The bill would require a background check on every gun sale or transfer, a move that 97% of Americans already support, according to Giffords.org.
The people in this country want to see this legislation passed.
Supporters say the bill will make it harder for people to skirt existing laws, including avoiding background checks by sharing firearms. But critics say the law would do that by burdening legitimate gun owners and their Second Amendment rights.
It's at the heart of what our founding fathers intended, that all Americans should have the right to use firearms to defend themselves.
And defend others, says Congressman Randy Weber, a Republican from Texas.
The only thing that stops a bad person with a gun is a good person with a gun.
Despite opposition from most Republicans in the House, the bill is almost assured passage since it has 233 co-sponsors. Its fate is less certain in the Senate, but Giffords, speaking in the shadow of the Capitol today, had a message for supporters of the bill.
We must never stop fighting. Fight, fight, fight.
While Arizona Democrats are signed on to the bill, the state's Republicans have not. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, a Republican from Peoria, said on the House floor today that the bill is, quote, well-intentioned but will not solve the problem. In Washington, Alyssa Klink, Cronkite News.
It's Alzheimer's Awareness Day, so the Alzheimer's Association held important discussions with advocates, caregivers, and legislators in support of Senate Bill 1357. If passed, the bill would mandate dementia training standards for caregivers, first responders, and healthcare professionals to ensure the best possible treatment for those affected by the disease. The legislation would also implement a study committee to provide recommendations for changes to be made in 2020.
Currently, we have a bill that is floating around in the Senate that will create a study committee on really looking at training requirements for the whole continuum of care for people that are impacted by Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Currently, there is no necessarily mandated trainings, and we really want not just our state legislators, but key members of the community to really look at the needs for people impacted by this disease and really look at what's best for them for medical down to home health care.
Today, we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Grand Canyon's designation as a national park. We're taking a look at efforts to protect the land, as well as how two women are celebrating the birthday in a unique way. But first, Jody Guerrero explains just what a visit means to the park for those who see its majesty in person.
At 227 miles long, the Grand Canyon has been a must-see destination, inspiring people from all over the world to see the canyon with their own eyes.
I walked up and opened my eyes and it was breathtaking. It's wild to think that we didn't create this, that this is something that was created out of nature, and it was breathtaking. It was magical.
Roger Clark is the program director for the nonprofit conservation organization, the Grand Canyon Trust. He recommends that visitors try something new and go below the rim of the canyon.
Just 100 yards down the trail and you'll begin to see things you couldn't even imagine.
Nearly 100,000 visitors do venture into the canyon and stay the night below the rim. That's according to recent numbers from the park. At the Grand Canyon, Jody Guerrero, Cronkite News.
A bill that's planned to be introduced to Congress could prevent uranium mining on more than 1 million acres of land around the Grand Canyon. And as Cronkite News reporter Lillian Donahue reports, this is something representatives and tribes in northern Arizona call long overdue.
Thank you. A year ago, we traveled to the bottom of the Grand Canyon to talk with people of the Havasupai tribe. For years, they've expressed their concerns for uranium mining near their ancestral lands. Now, lawmakers are taking action, saying the tribe's voices are not unheard.
Havasupai means people of the blue-green water, and we have been living here for over thousands of years.
Hundreds of Havasupai tribal members live at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. They say it's the future of their tribe and they want to protect their sacred water. But for decades, many Native communities in northern Arizona have expressed concerns over uranium mining just miles from the Grand Canyon National Park.
And we have a sacred duty to protect the land and the Grand Canyon.
Now legislators are taking notice. Congressman and chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, Raul Grijalva, is introducing a bill today on the 100th anniversary of the park.
To protect the Grand Canyon, protect its watershed, protect the resource of the Colorado River.
The bill would make a temporary ban on uranium mining set in place during the Obama administration permanent. Although it's printed on one sheet, front and back, you could say this bill is relatively small, but the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act will have big implications on the Grand Canyon and surrounding areas, taking federally recognized land over 1 million acres out of the equation for uranium mining.
The risks associated with uranium mining dramatically outweigh any of the benefits to this region or to this nation.
A recent report by the Grand Canyon Trust cited multiple contaminated mines around the national park. One of those, the Canyon Mine, remains active and even flooded in 2017. The mine's parent company, Energy Fuels, had to remove more than 1 million gallons of tainted water from the area.
The legacy of contamination associated with uranium mining is tragic.
However, Arizona's 4th Congressional District Representative Paul Gosar released a statement calling the permanent ban on uranium mining a misguided quest that would, quote, undermine American energy security.
Because it's a cause.
Despite past preservation attempts in the Grand Canyon, Representative Grijalva says he's confident and has a message for his colleagues on Capitol Hill.
To think of the Grand Canyon not in terms of a piece of federal land that they should open up as a commodity for drilling, for mining, and for extraction. They should think of it as a treasure that they need to comfort and take care of.
A bipartisan poll conducted in August asked 600 registered voters in Arizona whether or not they support the continuation of a uranium ban near the Grand Canyon. The majority of Arizonans responded in favor of the moratorium, while 29% of them said that locking up land from mining companies would actually stifle job creation and local economies.
Our coverage of the Grand Canyon's 100th anniversary continues after the break.
Coming up, it's the ultimate bucket list. How two friends are on a quest to celebrate by going on 100 adventures. Don't go away.
With wildfires, a scarcity of water, and other environmental issues facing the Earth today, it's critical to stay up to date with local impacts of a changing climate. That's why we created Elemental, covering sustainability, a multimedia collaboration between public television and radio stations. From climate change to water conservation to renewable energy and much more, Elemental covers the latest in sustainability news. Find our stories on our website, elementalreports.com.
Today marks 100 years since the Grand Canyon was declared a national park, but that isn't the only impressive number for the world wonder. 358, that's the number of total trail miles in the Grand Canyon. 290, that's how many searches and rescues were performed by the Canyon's Park Services in 2017. 6.2 million is how many people visited the Grand Canyon in 2017, making it the second most visited national park in the country. And 1 mile, the average depth of this massive landmark. Whether you're a regular visitor, a national park traveler, or virtual explorer, the Grand Canyon is a sight to be seen. Take a look.
The story of the Grand Canyon begins in the Rocky Mountains. Geologists say it took nearly 6 million years for the Colorado River to carve the canyon. The first inhabitants of the Grand Canyon arrived about 10,000 years ago. Indigenous people and Native American tribes experienced the Grand Canyon's splendor long before any Europeans came. Spanish explorers were the first Europeans to lay eyes on the canyon during an expedition in 1540. Major John Wesley Powell and his team in 1869 were the first to successfully take wooden boats down the Colorado River and through the canyon. Powell and his team were the first to call the natural wonder the Grand Canyon. President Theodore Roosevelt saw the canyon for the first time in 1903. Roosevelt initially declared the land the Grand Canyon Game Preserve. President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed it a U.S. national park in 1919. More than 37,000 people visited that first year. Architects and builders responded, constructing bridges, viewpoints, and Grand Canyon Village. Park rangers served as guides and caretakers, trying to keep visitors safe while protecting the park. Polly Petraw was among them. In 1929, she became the first female ranger at the Grand Canyon. Visitors raft through the canyon, hike along more than 100 miles of trails, or ride mules to the canyon floor. Others simply enjoy the vistas from the park's many breathtaking overlooks. 100 years later, the Grand Canyon remains a wonder.
More than 6 million people visit the Grand Canyon National Park every year. Some people keep coming back, like two Arizona women who consider themselves Grand Canyon enthusiasts. As Cronkite News reporter Gabrielle Oliveira explains, they're setting out to celebrate the canyon's 100th birthday in a special way.
Abby Smith and Ann Kennison started celebrating the Grand Canyon's 100th birthday last Labor Day weekend. That's when they set out on their quest to do 100 things in or related to the Grand Canyon.
Hi everyone, we are still at the Grand Canyon and loving it.
And we worked with groups of friends to brainstorm this list, and as things have changed, we've added or decided not to do things, but our goal is to do 100 things.
Smith and Kennison came up with the idea after hearing two adventurers talk about how they hiked more than 750 miles in the canyon to raise awareness about development projects that could change the canyon. Since they started their 100 adventures, They've done everything from eating at the Grand Canyon Lodge to visiting the Hoover Dam.
The Grand Canyon is an amazing place. It's something that people can enjoy, and one of the things that I really love about it is that there's so many different ways to enjoy it.
The Grand Canyon is one of the 7th wonders of the world. Although federally it's turning 100 years old, it was actually formed 6 million years ago. And with millions of visitors annually, sustaining it could be a grand challenge.
I think one of the, something that a lot of visitors don't realize is that, they think I'm one of 6.2 million, but every one of those actions has an influence in the park and has an impact.
Vanessa Sehow at the Grand Canyon National Park says they're making a push for sustainability to celebrate the park's birthday. One goal is have zero landfill waste in the next 2 years and keep encouraging visitors to pack out their trash. Smith and Kennison say keeping the park as sustainable as possible is important to them.
I really value these landscapes, this space that's been set apart for everyone to enjoy and preserve and protect it for generations to come.
And with a view like this, sometimes it's all about who you're with.
I think my favorite thing is just my relationships with the people and the fun that I've had with my friends along the way.
The women have completed more than 80 activities so far. At the Grand Canyon, Gabrielle Oliveira, Cronkite News.
One of the top trending hashtags all day has been Grand Canyon 100. Governor Doug Ducey tweeting, "The Grand Canyon is more than an Arizona treasure, it's a national wonder." The national park sharing a photo this morning of the sunrise over the Grand Canyon. And Apple CEO Tim Cook even sharing this video, calling the national park a source of wonder and inspiration.
And it's been beautiful weather for up north. We're seeing nothing but sunshine for them today. Low to mid 40s, perfect for all the events they have going in honor of the 100th birthday. And if we have some cloud coverage moving in, but this is going to clear out. We're going to stay dry here statewide the next couple of days. This is the Arizona winter we all signed up for. And talking temperatures, we're going to see nothing but high 70s coming up for the next work week and into your weekend. For Cronkite Weather, I'm Lauren Sheeler.
Lunch shaming. Believe it or not, it's happening at some Valley schools.
But hopefully not for much longer.
It definitely would help so that students don't feel singled out when they are going in the lunch line and getting their food.
Coming up on Cronkite News, how lawmakers plan to force schools to make sure every kid gets a good meal.
Stay in the know on the go. At Cronkite News, we work hard to report the facts and keep you updated, whether we're on set or on the scene.
Taking it from the studio to the field. So I'm here in South Phoenix.
In Phoenix, we're just a click away. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or find us online at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
Lunchtime may be a favorite for many students in schools across the valley, but what if not all of them are being fed? A new bill is aiming to make sure this won't happen to hungry students. Cronkite News reporter Tavia Madison has the story.
When students come into class hungry, the learning process just shuts off.
Middle school teacher Naomi Lunskow says her students' nutrition is important.
They need to be well fed and have food in their system to be able to kind of zone in and have a healthy brain to process the things that I'm teaching them.
But not all schools in the valley are providing students with equal access to school lunches.
Some schools have a sign up, no cash, no lunch.
Arizona lawmakers have proposed a bill that would require schools to provide a meal to any student who requests one, even if they can't pay for it. Some schools provided students with a different meal, but lawmakers say it's not good enough.
They would give them alternative lunches, like maybe a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a fruit or whatever, but it was clearly not the regular lunch that other children got.
And they say alternative lunches created an even larger issue.
It creates a very hostile unfriendly environment in which they're supposed to be there to learn, and it's supposed to be a welcoming, supportive, nurturing place. And here they are being shamed because they don't have the money for lunch.
There are currently over 22 million students who rely on the free and reduced price lunch systems across the United States, according to NoKidHungry.org. And while that still remains here in the Valley, Arizona legislators say that more work needs to be done.
This will help schools to be able to know that they should just give the same lunch to every student and ask the parents to be sure to pay for it.
Legislators say it's much harder to learn on an empty stomach, and this issue will be resolved if every child is fed. In Phoenix, Tavia Madison, Cronkite News.
Cronkite News is proud to be the news division of Arizona PBS. Here's what's coming up on Arizona Horizon and PBS NewsHour.
On the next Arizona Horizon, we'll have an update on the failure of Argosy University and what's next for the school's students and teachers. And we'll preview a new Arizona PBS special on the 100th anniversary of Grand Canyon National Park.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next NewsHour, Nick Schifrin is in Vietnam ahead of President Trump's second summit with the leader of North Korea. That's Tuesday on the PBS NewsHour.
Our coverage of the Centennial Celebration continues on Arizona Horizon from 7 to 10 with a look at the role volunteers play at the park.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thank you for joining us. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.